My selfish sister set her engagement party on the same day as my job promotion dinner, then told everyone I was just trying to steal her thunder. My manager even got an invite to hers. Little did they know. You're seriously not coming to my engagement party? Talia's voice on the other end of the phone was half hurt, half smug. I have my promotion dinner that night, Talia. It's been planned for weeks. But this is my engagement. It's once in a lifetime. So was this promotion. Wow. You just can't stand not being the center of attention, can you? That was the conversation that turned everything upside down. I never imagined something as joyful as a job promotion would turn into a family Cold War. I'm Renee, 39, and I work as an architect in Denver, Colorado. I've spent most of my adult life grinding through long hours, project deadlines, and the constant challenge of being taken seriously as a woman in a male-dominated field. This year, after 13 years of climbing the ladder at my firm, Westline Studios, I was officially being promoted to senior partner. It was the kind of moment you don't just celebrate, it defines your career. My boss, Cynthia, and a few team members planned a dinner at the Nickel downtown. It was going to be elegant, low-key, but meaningful. People I respected were going to be there. I'd worked through weekends, canceled vacations, and even postponed a surgery to get to this point. I was proud. Then came Talia. She's my younger sister by 2 years. Talia's always been charismatic, social, and a little impulsive. She's had more career changes than I can count, hopping between interests like a frog on hot pavement. My parents have always adored her, creative, free-spirited, a dreamer. While I was working late nights, she was Instagramming her latte art and writing Facebook posts about finding her soul purpose. A few months before my promotion dinner, she met a guy named Jared. He's a tech consultant based in Seattle, and from what little I saw, he seemed quiet and intelligent, maybe too much so for Talia's whirlwind lifestyle. Still, after just 8 months of dating, she announced their engagement. We all congratulated her, of course. She posted ring photos, glowing selfies, and hashtags like #FinallyMyTime and #FairyTaleLove. I smiled through it. I didn't expect her to care about my work. We've always lived in different worlds. But what I didn't expect was to receive her engagement party invite, on the exact same night as my promotion dinner. I stared at the card in disbelief. At first, I genuinely thought it was a mistake. I called her immediately, assuming there had been some miscommunication. But no. She knew. And worse, she didn't care. It's not that big of a deal, she said breezily. Can't you move your thing? Move it? I couldn't believe her. My dinner had been planned weeks before, with my manager and our department heads already locked in. It was a formal, corporate celebration, not some backyard barbecue I could shift around. But Talia made it clear, her night came first. It's my engagement, Renee. You'll have other job stuff. This is my moment. I swallowed my anger and told her I wouldn't be able to make it, but I'd love to take her and Jared out for lunch sometime soon to celebrate. I thought we could move past it. I was wrong. Days later, I started hearing from my family. Cousins. Aunts. Even friends we hadn't spoken to in years. The tone of their messages was pointed. So I hear you're trying to steal the spotlight from Talia? She told us you scheduled some work just to compete with her. I mean, it's her engagement, Renee. You could have rescheduled. That's when it hit me, she wasn't just ignoring my dinner. She was actively telling people I scheduled it out of spite. I was so jealous of her happiness that I created a fake celebration to pull attention away. I was stunned. But it got worse. Cynthia, my boss, walked into my office a few days before the dinner holding an envelope. Your sister invited me to her engagement party, she said, raising an eyebrow. Isn't that the same night as your dinner? I was mortified. Talia had sent invitations to my coworkers. To people she didn't even know. And apparently, she told them I might not be at the party because of sibling drama. At that point, I was no longer surprised. Just disappointed. I considered canceling the dinner altogether. I felt like a fraud, like I'd somehow let my personal life bleed into my professional one in the worst possible way. But Cynthia, to her credit, insisted we go through with it. You earned this. Don't let anything take that away. The night of the dinner, I arrived in a navy dress I'd bought specially for the occasion. I wore low heels because my knees were still sore from an old injury, and I forced myself to smile. The room wasn't full. A few team members had apparently gone to Talia's party instead. Cynthia came, but late, and when she arrived, she mentioned that Talia had given a very entertaining toast about me. The implication was clear. She said you'd understand why she had to rise above the jealousy. Jealousy. That word stuck in my throat like a bone. The rest of the evening passed in a blur. I gave my thank you speech, posed for photos, and pretended everything was fine. But inside, I was humiliated. Even in the most professional space I had, my sister had managed to twist the narrative in her favor. When I got home that night, exhausted and drained, I found a plain white envelope tucked under my doormat. No return address. Inside was a photo of Talia's engagement cake. It was fancy, sure, but what caught my eye was the decoration on top, an edible banner that said, "The real reason to celebrate tonight." On the back of the photo, someone had scrawled in neat cursive, "She made speeches about how you always try to steal her spotlight. Just thought you should know. A friend." My hand shook. I didn't cry. I didn't yell. I just sat there, holding the photo, and for the first time in years, I truly saw the pattern. This wasn't new. This was just who she was. Talia had always needed to be the star. My accomplishments had always been inconvenient, something she needed to compete with or discredit. And for too long, I had let it slide, thinking family meant always forgiving. But not anymore. I decided that night I was done explaining myself. I didn't sleep much that night. I sat on the edge of my bed for hours, the photo in one hand and my phone in the other, scrolling through social media posts from the engagement party. There she was, glowing in a tight white dress with Jared by her side, surrounded by friends and extended family I hadn't seen in years. My parents were front and center in the pictures, smiling like they had everything they ever wanted. Not one photo included me. Not one mention of the promotion dinner, even though some of those people had been invited to both. The next morning, I didn't text her. I didn't call. I didn't confront her. I simply decided to pull back. I started with the group chat we shared with our parents, archived it. Then, I muted her on all platforms. Not blocked. I wasn't looking to make a statement. I just needed peace. A few days later, I sent thank you notes to the colleagues who had shown up at my dinner. Handwritten. Thoughtful. I even included a line or two about how much it meant to me that they came, despite everything going on. It felt good to move my energy into something sincere. Then, one of my team members, Alicia, a junior designer who had become a kind of protege to me, asked me if we could grab coffee. I assumed she wanted to debrief about the dinner, maybe talk about career strategy. But instead, she looked nervous. I wanted to say I'm sorry, she said, shifting uncomfortably in her chair. For what? She glanced down. I went to your sister's party. I shouldn't have. She reached out personally. Said you'd be fine with it. That it wasn't that big of a deal. I didn't realize. I waved her off before she could finish. It's okay, really. You don't need to apologize. But she wasn't finished. I left early, she added. Something felt off. She was making jokes about you, like performative, you know? Kind of mocking. People were laughing, but it didn't sit right. I felt a dull ache in my chest. I should have been used to it by now, but hearing it from someone else, that my own sister had turned me into the punchline of her big night, it still stung. I nodded. Thanks for telling me. Alicia paused. You don't deserve that, Renee. I just wanted you to know not everyone there was laughing. I smiled, but it was tight. Controlled. Well. Lesson learned, huh? The next week, I poured myself into work. Not to run away from it all, but because I wanted to. It was the one space where I still had control. I put together 2 new pitches, joined a mentorship program, and even scheduled a speaking engagement for the American Institute of Architects Regional Conference. Meanwhile, my sister kept calling. At first, it was casual. Then came the guilt-laced texts. I know we've had tension, but I really want us to be close again. Are you really going to let this ruin our relationship? Jared thinks you're being unfair. By the 3rd week, she called me out in the family group chat. Can't believe my own sister is ghosting me after the biggest moment of my life. But sure, go be a career robot or whatever. I stared at the message. My parents said nothing. Not even a private text to ask what was going on. They had already picked a side, even if they didn't say it out loud. And that silence said more than any speech Talia could have made. A few days later, I got a LinkedIn message from someone I didn't recognize, Mark Belrose, a UX consultant from Seattle. He mentioned he was an old colleague of Jared's. Hey Renee, hope it's not weird I'm reaching out. I met you briefly at a design panel last year. I just wanted to say I admire how you handled everything with your sister. Jared mentioned what happened. He felt really caught in the middle. I blinked at the message, stunned. I hadn't even realized Jared knew my side of things. I responded politely, thanking him and asking how Jared was doing. Mark replied, he moved back to Seattle last month. They broke things off. It got toxic fast. I think he saw another side of her. I reread the message 3 times. It shouldn't have satisfied me, but it did. Not because I wanted her relationship to fail, but because, for once, someone else saw it. The manipulation. The need for control. The theatrics. I never responded after that. A week later, my parents invited me to a brunch they were hosting just to catch up. I declined. Politely, but firmly. I told them I had plans. They didn't respond. It's strange how silence becomes a new kind of language between people who used to know everything about you. After I declined that brunch, the group chat went quieter. My mom sent the occasional forwarded recipe or meme, and my dad sent a thumbs up here and there, but there were no direct messages. No, hey, we missed you. No questions. Just this sense that they were waiting for me to come around. Like I was the one throwing a tantrum. I kept telling myself it was fine. That this space was good. That it was better than trying to force conversations with people who didn't really see me. But it didn't feel good. Not yet. You don't just grieve people when they die. Sometimes you grieve them when they disappoint you so profoundly, it rearranges the way you understand love. And that kind of grief is quiet. No casseroles. No sympathy cards. Just long walks around the block wondering if you were ever really close to them at all. I started going to therapy more regularly. My therapist, Camilla, was sharp but kind, the kind of woman who never raised her voice but somehow saw right through you. During one session, I told her the story about the cake photo again. She paused, then said, "Do you think Talia's done this kind of thing before? In smaller ways?" That question hit like a rock in my stomach. Yes. She had. All the time. When I got accepted to CU Boulder, she told people I only got in because of a diversity scholarship, which wasn't even true. When I bought my first condo, she showed up a week later with photos of a cuter place she was thinking about buying. She used to call me professor at family dinners, not because I was one, but because she thought I talked like I was better than everyone. They were small things. Petty. But stacked over decades, they formed this unshakable sense that any step forward I made had to be stepped over by her. Camilla didn't give me an answer. She just let the silence sit there. That week, I started journaling, something I hadn't done since college. I didn't write poetry or metaphors, just raw observations. Things like, I think I've spent most of my life keeping the peace, but I'm not even sure the peace was real. And, maybe family isn't who you're born to. Maybe it's who doesn't punish you for being proud of yourself. Writing it down didn't fix anything. But it gave me clarity. Work became more fulfilling than ever. I led my first project as senior partner, a redevelopment of a stretch of the Platte River area that had been ignored for years. We were turning it into a community space with trails, artisan retail units, and public seating. It was the kind of urban planning I'd always wanted to do. Purposeful, not just profitable. Cynthia told me at one point, "You're thriving in this role, Renee. I've seen a shift in you." I smiled, but I didn't say what I was thinking. The shift came because I finally stopped shrinking around people who never wanted to see me whole. Talia, meanwhile, kept popping up on social media. She'd dyed her hair red, started promoting some kind of wellness brand, and was posting vague captions about healing and betrayal. At one point, she wrote a long post about being stabbed in the back by those closest to you, and several family members liked it. It should have made me angry. But honestly, I just felt tired. Tired of the show. Tired of the narrative she spun where she was always the victim, no matter how much she hurt others. A few months passed. Then one afternoon, I got a call from my dad. It rang 3 times before I answered. He didn't call often. Usually it was my mom. He didn't waste time on pleasantries. "Your mother's upset," he said. "Talia says you've cut her out." I closed my laptop and leaned back in my chair. "I haven't cut her out. I've taken a step back," I said. "There's a difference." He sighed. "Renee. You girls used to be so close." I almost laughed. "Were we? Or did you just think we were because I never complained?" He went quiet. "She's going through a lot. The breakup. The move. You know how emotional she can be." "Yeah. And you know how quiet I can be," I said. "But just because I don't cry loud doesn't mean I'm not hurt." There was a long pause. He finally said, "We just want the family to stay together." I bit the inside of my cheek. I wanted that too. But you can't have togetherness when it only works for some of us. I was made out to be the villain, and none of you even asked my side. You showed up to her party. You skipped my dinner. You said nothing when she told people I was jealous. He didn't have a response for that. Just another sigh. "I'll talk to your mother," he said finally. "I think you both should do some thinking," I replied. "Because I'm not chasing anyone anymore." I hung up before he could say anything else. My hand was shaking. That night, I cooked a full dinner for one. Roasted salmon, baby potatoes, fresh asparagus. I set the table like I was hosting someone, even though it was just me and Milo, my greyhound, curled up under the table. And when I sat down, I raised a glass of white wine and toasted quietly to myself. To finally be okay with disappointing the people who never bothered to understand me in the first place. The months passed. I didn't rush to fix things with my family, and they didn't exactly rush to fix things with me either. At some point, that pain turned into indifference. The quiet kind. Where you stop checking their social media. Where your phone feels lighter without their texts. Where holidays roll around and you don't dread them, you just make other plans. I started filling that emotional space with better things. I reconnected with old college friends, people I'd drifted from, not because of a falling out, but because life had gotten busy. I joined a local architecture committee that focused on affordable housing and was eventually invited to speak at a city planning conference in Chicago. For the first time in years, I wasn't chasing validation, I was just living. Talia, though, wasn't doing quite so well. A mutual acquaintance who I hadn't spoken to in forever ran into me at a gallery event and asked quietly, "Hey, is your sister okay?" I shrugged. "Why?" She leaned in. "She's been saying some things." Pretty wild things on Instagram. Vague stuff. Something about being hampered. And she's trying to launch a coaching business, but I don't know. It's a little all over the place. I smiled politely and changed the subject. I didn't want to live in her orbit anymore, even secondhand. But then, in early spring, I received an email that said everything. Shift. It was from the Denver Women in Business Alliance. Every year, they host a panel called Leadership and Resilience, a spotlight event with local entrepreneurs, nonprofit leaders, and industry trailblazers. They'd chosen me as one of the panelists for this year's session. There was a reception afterward, and I could invite a few guests. It was going to be attended by media outlets, local influencers, business owners, essentially, the city's most connected people. I accepted. A week later, while I was finalizing my panel talking points, I got a LinkedIn message from Jared. Yes, that Jared. It had been nearly a year since the engagement fiasco. I debated ignoring it. But curiosity won. Hey Renee, I hope this isn't strange. I just wanted to say congratulations on your promotion. I saw your name pop up on the DWBA event email. It's well deserved. Also, I'm sorry. About everything. I was too naive during that engagement. There were a lot of things I didn't see clearly until after. Wishing you all the best. Jared, I stared at it for a long time. Eventually, I replied with a short, kind message. Thanks, Jared. I appreciate you reaching out. I'm glad you're doing better too. That was it. No drama. No digging. Just closure. But then, the perfect opportunity for poetic justice arrived. 2 weeks before the DWBA event, I got a call from the panel coordinator. One of the vendors had dropped out, the person in charge of their vendor tables, which local women-owned businesses could apply for. They were opening a few extra spots last minute and wanted to know if I had anyone to recommend. It hit me instantly. Talia had been trying to launch a coaching business, Life Design for Women. She hadn't succeeded at much lately, but she was desperate to be seen. To have a platform. To be someone. I told the coordinator I had someone in mind. I gave her Talia's business info and mentioned she'd probably love the exposure. Then I waited. Sure enough, a few days later, I got a message from my mother, her first direct contact with me in months. Talia told us she's going to be part of the DWBA event you're speaking at. Isn't that wonderful? Maybe this is the chance to reconnect. I didn't respond. I just smiled. The night of the event was perfect. I wore a tailored black suit, the kind of outfit that makes you stand taller. My hair was done, my makeup light but polished. I stepped onto that stage and talked about resilience, not in vague terms, but real ones. About surviving in a workplace hampered, imposter syndrome, and what it means to succeed even when your support system lets you down. The audience nodded. A few people even teared up. And after the panel, I walked through the vendor booths. There was Talia. She was sitting behind a folding table with a white cloth and a few scattered pamphlets. Her branding was vague, her signage amateur. She wore a forced smile and kept adjusting her bracelets. No one was stopping by. Our eyes met briefly. She didn't smile. I didn't wave. And in that moment, something clicked. She was there. But not as the star. Not on stage. Not being toasted with champagne. She was just there. On the sidelines. Watching me take up the space I'd always been too afraid to claim in front of her. That was the revenge. Quiet. Fulfilling. Completely devoid of cruelty. Because the best revenge wasn't about humiliating her. It was about no longer caring if she saw me shine. Later, as I left the event, I passed by her booth again. She was mid-conversation with someone, probably pitching her services. Her voice had that same animated, overcompensating energy I'd known since childhood. I didn't interrupt. I just walked past, heels clicking on the polished floor, and headed out into the night air. I drove home in silence, no music, windows down. Denver was still cool that time of year. Crisp and honest. The city lights glowed in the rearview mirror as I turned down my street. When I got inside, I poured a glass of wine and sat on the balcony with Milo curled beside me. Not because I needed to celebrate a victory, but because I'd stopped playing a game I never asked to be part of. And I'd won anyway.